For many years, Barron Trump remained a quiet figure in the background of one of America's most watched families. While his siblings learned to navigate the spotlight and live under constant public attention, Barron chose a path of quiet distance, almost unshakable in his silence, far removed from the curiosity of the outside world. At first, many assumed he was simply a reserved young man, whether by personality or by disinterest in the political and media whirlwind surrounding his family. But recently, surprising details shared by Elon Musk caused people to rethink that, to understand those revelations, it's worth going back to Barron himself. Barron William Trump was born on March 20th, 2006, in New York City, the only child of Donald and Melania Trump. His childhood was anything but ordinary, spent inside the gilded halls of Trump Tower, a symbol of wealth and power. Yet within that world, Barron carved out a quiet corner for himself. He attended elite private schools, first Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School in Manhattan, and later St. Andrew's Episcopal School while living in the White House. These choices reflected not only educational quality, but also Melania Trump's determined effort to give her son a private, as normal as possible upbringing in extraordinary circumstances. After the family's move to Florida, Barron enrolled at Oxbridge Academy, a private institution known for cultivating leaders and forward thinkers. Throughout this journey, Barron chose a markedly different path than his siblings, staying discreet, reserved, and almost invisible amidst the constant media storm. Melania served as his protector, standing firm to safeguard his peace. She insisted that his focus remain on school, sports, and cultural growth. As a result, Barron grew into a multilingual young man, fluent in English, Slovenian, and French, a reflection of his mother's European heritage and a borderless education. Teachers and those close to the Trump family describe Barron as disciplined, reserved, and surprisingly sharp. He has a deep interest in technology, sports, and hands-on learning, traits that reveal him to be more of an observer than an active participant. Unlike his family's clear political focus, Barron has avoided being swept into that world, choosing instead a quieter, more thoughtful path of his own. Standing at over 2 meters tall, his height makes him impossible to miss anywhere he goes. Yet what truly sets him apart is not his stature, but his calm presence, his ability to command attention through silence and composure. Within the family, he is not just the youngest, but also a uniquely protected figure. Donald Trump has often spoken of his son with a blend of pride and protectiveness. He praises Barron as highly intelligent, noting his talent for grasping complex ideas with little explanation. Though he sometimes jokes about Barron being a huge kid, beneath the humor lies a father's quiet admiration for a son whose sharpness doesn't require noise to be noticed. Unlike his siblings, who were pushed early into business and media, Barron has been allowed to grow at his own pace, in his own way. Trump himself seems to respect this choice. Melania, on the other hand, has called Barron her miracle, a phrase that reflects not only tenderness, but also her fierce determination to shield him. Even during her demanding years as First Lady under the harsh public spotlight, she held firmly to one principle: Barron would not sacrifice his childhood for politics or publicity. Those who know him describe him as attentive, sensitive, and strong-willed. He speaks rarely, but when he does, his words carry weight, often commanding full attention. Some close to the family even remark on his instinct for strategy, an almost natural ability to read people. His insight has surprised not only his parents, but even seasoned advisors within Trump's circle who quietly acknowledged his perceptiveness. There is something about Barron, still not fully revealed, that suggests he may one day carve out a role uniquely his own. While his siblings made headlines and appeared at press conferences, Barron preferred to remain the quiet observer, listening, analyzing, learning. Many believe he is quietly preparing himself, not for a predefined role, but for something deeper, something singular. And it was in this silence that one of the most visionary businessmen of our time noticed what others had overlooked. That man was Elon Musk. It all began one evening, a night that would later be remembered as a turning point. When Donald Trump reaffirmed his return to the political arena, it was Barron Trump who, both in presence and in symbolism, stood out above everyone else inside Republican campaign headquarters. Towering at over 2 meters, Barron's presence wasn't defined by height alone. There was something else, a stillness that wasn't shyness, but rather the composure of someone who understands the power of keeping distance in order to observe. A quiet strategist. And Elon Musk, known for spotting what others overlook, seemed to recognize it immediately. Musk rarely comments on individuals outside the worlds of technology and science, where his influence is unrivaled. Yet, in a rare departure from that rule, he broke his silence. His unexpected remarks about Barron Trump stunned many. Not because of what was said, but because they recast the image of a young man long seen as silent and detached into something entirely different. The story began at what seemed like an ordinary moment, the traditional Thanksgiving dinner at Mar-a-Lago, usually a warm, predictable family event. But this time something subtle sparked a wave of speculation across social media. Barron Trump and Elon Musk were seen sitting side by side deep in conversation, serious, focused, completely absorbed in their exchange, oblivious to the festive chatter around them. Within hours, the images spread at lightning speed. A global tech icon and a young man who had lived far from the media spotlight, locked in a discussion so intent it looked as if the outside world didn't exist. No one knew what they were talking about, but questions erupted instantly. Were they secretly sketching out a new political strategy? Collaborating on some undisclosed tech venture? Or was it nothing more than chance seating at the same dinner table? The less certain the truth seemed, the wilder the theories grew. True to form, Musk didn't leave the public waiting long. He did speak out, but not to clarify, rather to deepen the mystery. Musk dismissed any political undertones to the conversation, but in doing so, he opened a different window into Barron's mind. According to Musk, Barron possesses a maturity far beyond his years, even by the lofty standards of someone who has worked with world-class scientists and technological visionaries. What struck Musk most was Barron's sharpness. He doesn't ask simple questions or recycle tired ideas. Instead, he challenges, debates, proposes original theories, and pushes conversations into uncharted territory. Musk explained that Barron's brilliance isn't just academic. It's a blend of curiosity and depth, the kind of mix that makes any exchange with him a true intellectual experience. Musk revealed that Barron showed strong interest in artificial intelligence, digital governance, technology-driven education, and especially the intersection between cutting-edge tech and climate solutions. It wasn't the shallow curiosity of youth, but the kind of focused intensity that comes from deep reflection. Even as a child, Barron was fascinated with taking things apart and putting them back together, not out of mischief, but to truly understand how they worked. Musk believes that instinct, the drive to find order in chaos, is the seed that fuels great innovators. But beyond intellect, what impressed him most was Barron's silence. Not a silence born of shyness, but of presence. He's the kind of person who doesn't need noise to be noticed. Someone who speaks rarely, yet commands attention when he does. Someone unmoved by the spotlight, preferring the vantage point of the observer, where the view is broader and deeper. His fluency in English, Slovenian, and French further widens his perspective. Musk argued that Barron's early exposure to different cultures, languages, and political landscapes shaped a global mindset, one that rises above borders and ideology. Growing up amid weighty decisions, powerful figures, and high-level conversations, Barron seems to have learned a crucial truth. Intelligence isn't about speaking quickly, it's about listening deeply and absorbing. For Musk, Barron's emotional intelligence is exceptionally rare, especially at his age in a world dominated by noise. And when Elon Musk, a man notorious for his impossibly high standards and his reluctance to praise, openly admires a young man not yet fully in the public eye, the world takes notice. He was no longer just the quiet son of the former president. He had become the sharp observer, the silent learner, preparing for something still undefined. Not through grand gestures, but through steady, deliberate accumulation, like a slow, unstoppable current running beneath the surface. And soon, subtle but undeniable signs began to emerge from within Donald Trump's campaign. The growing wave of support among younger voters no longer looked like coincidence. Strategists started connecting the dots, and many became convinced that behind the shift was Barron's quiet influence. Reports suggested it was Barron who encouraged his father to abandon outdated campaign tactics. Gone were the old posters and tired, recycled speeches. In their place, Barron pushed for a new approach, one that reached young people where they truly live, on digital platforms. He urged his father to appear on podcasts like Joe Rogan's, spaces where long, unfiltered conversations create genuine connections. Not shallow ads, but real discussions where people actually listen. At first, the campaign team was hesitant. Some dismissed the idea as risky, unnecessary, a bold suggestion from someone who, in their eyes, didn't even appear on the political strategy map. But the results soon silenced every doubt. Trump's ability to connect with younger voters, once thought unreachable, began to rise sharply. His unscripted appearances, raw interactions, and authentic reactions resonated deeply. And behind it all, there was the imprint of the young man many had long written off as simply the quiet one, Barron Trump. According to insiders like Laura Trump, Barron's political instincts weren't born out of luck or sudden inspiration. They were shaped carefully over time, through a quiet but clear progression that began during his school years. Even then, Barron surprised adults, pointing out which events were truly essential, what themes should be highlighted in speeches, and even boldly critiquing the strategies of seasoned political advisors. He wasn't naive, nor impulsive. His ideas carried a forward-looking weight. They didn't cling to outdated rules, nor did they emerge from youthful rebellion. Instead, they were glimpses of someone who senses the currents of change before they take shape. He quietly grew into an unofficial strategist, closely tracking the shifting tides of social media, where collective emotions and changes in public thinking reveal themselves most honestly. From there, Barron began advising on how to reach the hearts of a new generation, young people weary of empty promises. Once overlooked, Barron started to gain recognition far beyond his family circle. Even outside voices from neutral or even opposing camps began to speak of him. John Morgan, a prominent attorney with strong ties to the Democratic Party, drew attention when he openly declared that at just 18 years old, Barron Trump possessed a sharper and deeper political vision than many of the advisors working with Kamala Harris. Morgan didn't hesitate to highlight Barron's influence in reshaping Donald Trump's image, from that of a divisive figure to one who was beginning to regain the trust of younger voters. That transformation, he argued, began when Trump stepped onto unconventional platforms where conversations were raw, unedited, and real. In an era where authenticity can mean survival and adaptation is a necessity, Barron has become a silent yet effective force. And so, at Thanksgiving night in Mar-a-Lago, the spark was lit. Amid warm greetings, bright lights, and carefully polished speeches, one image went viral. Elon Musk and Barron Trump, two men from different generations and worlds, locked in an intense exchange that clearly didn't belong to a holiday gathering. No one needed to know the exact words. The focused expressions, the body language, the sheer gravity of their concentration were enough to fuel the collective imagination. Speculation erupted. Were they plotting a political conspiracy? The early stages of a futuristic startup? But when Musk finally spoke, the narrative shifted into something even more profound than any theory. Musk revealed that their conversation was anything but casual and far from coincidence. It was a dialogue between two minds exploring subjects much of the world isn't yet ready to confront: the future of humanity, the ethics of artificial intelligence, education in the digital age, and technology's vital role in addressing the climate crisis. According to Musk, Barron displayed a rare depth of awareness, not only questioning the foundations of AI governance, but also proposing ways technology could serve educational equity, such as creating virtual tutors designed with ethical frameworks that honor cultural diversity and individual learning needs. Musk recalled a striking moment when Barron suggested integrating satellite networks like Starlink with real-time environmental sensor systems. His idea was to create a global response network, capable of monitoring, assessing, and reacting instantly to climate threats, even in the most remote corners of the planet. For an 18-year-old to present a technically viable model with such a comprehensive vision was enough to capture the genuine attention of Elon Musk, a man rarely impressed. But Barron's insight went beyond technical proposals. He spoke of building decentralized platforms, safeguarding free expression, and designing digital tools guided by ethics, not to manipulate users, but to respect their intelligence. That evening's conversation stretched on for hours, leaving Musk deeply moved. He later described Barron as calm, thoughtful, and confident, a young thinker whose ideas weren't dressed in exaggeration, but conveyed with clarity and quiet conviction. What had begun as a simple encounter transformed into a turning point, personally and politically. From that night on, Musk and Barron began forming the bond of mentor and young intellectual. Elon's mother, May Musk, would later share that the two spent the entire evening diving into ethical questions surrounding artificial intelligence and the role of innovation in combating climate change. From those exchanges grew a relationship without fanfare, but with significant influence. Since then, Musk has become a familiar presence within Donald Trump's inner circle. The tensions of the past, when Musk had openly criticized Trump and dismissed his record on electric vehicles, seemed to dissolve like old grudges fading with time. In their place emerged a new chapter marked by mutual respect, understanding, and a shared vision: to build a smarter, more advanced, and more humane America through technology. Just days after that Thanksgiving meeting, Musk posted an unexpected photo: Donald Trump with his hand resting on Musk's shoulder, captioned with only a few simple words: "If Barron approves it, count me in." Whether it was meant as a joke or a deliberate hint, that single remark sent shockwaves through observers. It revealed just how quietly influential Barron Trump had become. He was subtly reshaping alliances at the very top. It wasn't long before Elon Musk was officially appointed as head of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, a branch within Trump's administration tasked with modernizing public services through data and technology. For Musk, it wasn't simply a promotion. It was a reinvention. The once tech world maverick had now stepped inside the system. Yet this shift wasn't driven by a hunger for power, but by something far more unexpected: the spark lit by an unassuming, profound young man named Barron. Meanwhile, Barron continued his own path in silence. In September 2024, he enrolled at New York University, a choice rooted in independence and self-determination. He turned away from the prestige of Harvard, Yale, and other glittering Ivy League names. While many assumed he would retreat from politics or escape his father's looming shadow, Barron chose to remain in New York, a city loud, complex, sometimes brutal, yet filled with the memories of his earliest years. At NYU, his worldview began to broaden. New friendships, intellectual debate circles, and challenging academic projects became the ground on which he continued to shape himself, always quietly, always with the same reflective intensity that had once caught Elon Musk off guard. His classmates described him as deeply introspective, someone who always listened before speaking. And when he finally did, the room fell silent. Not because he demanded it, but because his words carried a natural weight, free of arrogance, yet magnetic in their certainty. The Trump name, with its controversies, victories, and disputed legacy, remains tied to Barron. But the identity he is crafting goes far beyond it. Not in rejection of his heritage, but in building something new, a persona that is independent, rational, calm, and questioning rather than dogmatic. He chooses to think through his own experiences and observations, rather than recycle inherited ideologies under the unforgiving glare of fame that comes with being a Trump. Barron is carving out a path that begins not with legacy, but with thought, with ideas, with vision, with the courage to ask the hardest questions. That story is only just beginning. But if Elon Musk's revelations hold even a grain of truth, then Barron Trump's future may transcend the old molds of politics and business. His legacy could become something entirely different, one born not of tradition, but of vision and inner strength. Maybe Barron will emerge as a pioneer in technology, someone capable of redefining how humans interact with the digital world and with one another. Perhaps he'll become a thinker with the vision to reshape the foundations of global education, where artificial intelligence doesn't replace teachers, but instead serves as an ethical and cultural companion, guiding students through a personalized journey of learning. Or maybe Barron will evolve into a new kind of symbol for a generation craving different voices, not loud, not extreme, but clear, compassionate, and unafraid to confront the questions that still have no answers. We don't know yet. Time will write the rest of his story. But one thing is already certain. Barron Trump is no longer the quiet boy seen in old family photographs. He is preparing for something far greater, something the world hasn't yet imagined. And maybe now is the moment to start listening to him, not for his last name, but for who he truly is. So what do you think of Barron Trump? Do you believe he really is the quiet force reshaping how the world views the Trump legacy? Could the path he has chosen, balancing the weight of heritage with the drive to carve out his own destiny, take him to a place no one could have predicted? Share your thoughts in the comments. I always value hearing diverse perspectives, whether skeptical, empathetic, or simply instinctive impressions. If you found meaning in this deeper look into his journey, don't forget to, have you ever wondered what it's like to be the youngest kid in America's biggest family? For years, Barron Trump was barely more than a shadow, until one moment changed everything. With just 2 words, he told the world he was done watching and ready to step up. Stick with me, because what I'm about to share about Barron and his mom, Melania, will blow your mind. It all happened on a clear January morning. Cameras were rolling non-stop, and every handshake felt like history in the making. Before his dad's second inauguration in 2025, Barron was just a quiet figure, always in the background. He was tall and calm, with the same unreadable expression he'd worn since he was a kid. But everything shifted when President Biden reached out to shake his hand. It wasn't just any handshake. What Barron whispered at that moment was so soft and quick that most people missed it, until the clip blew up online. At first glance, it looked like a simple greeting, firm handshake, polite words, nothing special. But the internet did what it does best, slowed it down, zoomed in, and analyzed every frame. Lip readers picked up something chilling in those few seconds. Barron's lips moved just enough to form 2 words. Those words set social media on fire. Some say he said exactly, a quiet, almost indifferent reply. Others swear it was something more deliberate, something planned. Now is the time. If true, those words carried a meaning no one could quite decode. Was it a secret message? A warning? A claim? No one agreed. What was even stranger was Biden's reaction. His usual warm smile flickered for a split second into something harder. A flash of surprise, or maybe recognition, before he quickly composed himself. That brief expression didn't go unnoticed. Commentators replayed it again and again, wondering if Biden had just understood something no one else did. Theories ran wild. Some believed Barron had quietly joined the family's political engine and was making a bold statement. Others thought it was just an awkward moment between two men obliged to be courteous. One thing was clear: it wasn't a normal greeting. There was tension beneath the surface that didn't belong in a simple hello. Barron had always been the quiet kid, dodging cameras, keeping his distance. He didn't seek the spotlight his family was known for, but in that instant, with a whisper and a steely look, he shattered that image. He wasn't just the shy youngest anymore. He was playing a different game. Sometimes the quietest player is the most powerful. Analysts dissected the video frame by frame, the subtle nod, the tightening of Biden's jaw, searching for what it all meant. Every detail of that handshake was scrutinized for clues. What they discovered only made the mystery deeper. It wasn't just the words he spoke. It was the way he delivered them. Calm, composed, completely in control. It was as if Barron had been waiting for this exact moment all along. Whether you heard him say exactly or "it's time," one thing was clear: Barron wasn't going to stay silent anymore. The story everyone thought they knew about him was over in a heartbeat. Barron Trump wasn't just the quiet kid from a complicated family. He was nothing like anyone expected. People replayed the video again and again, asking the same question. If this was just the beginning, what else had he been planning all these years? Because if one subtle signal could shift how the world saw him in an instant, imagine what else might be hidden behind the silence his mother had worked so hard to maintain. And that's where the real story begins, with Melania Trump, the woman who meticulously crafted every part of Barron's private world and earned the title Architect of Silence. Long before Barron stepped onto that stage and left everyone wondering about his true intentions, Melania had mapped out his future. She wasn't just his mother, she was his shield, his strategist, and the mastermind behind his quiet strength. She understood something about power that few in the family grasped. Sometimes the person who says the least holds the most influence. From early on, Melania made a firm decision. She wouldn't let Barron get caught up in the chaos surrounding his father. She knew firsthand what all that attention, the cameras, the scandals, the noise, could do to a person. The Trump name had become more of a brand than a family, and she was determined to protect her son from that fate. While Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric stepped into the spotlight and took the family business head-on, Barron quietly grew up out of view. It wasn't that he couldn't handle the spotlight. It was that Melania believed he shouldn't have to. Every decision she made for him was intentional. Instead of sending him to the elite prep schools in Washington, D.C., like most presidential kids, she chose St. Andrew's Episcopal School. It wasn't flashy or prestigious, but it gave Barron something priceless: peace. Fewer cameras at the gate, less whispering in the hallways. Peers saw him as a person, not a headline. For Melania, it was never about the school's reputation. It was about creating a space where Barron could grow and be himself. The same approach carried over at home. Barron wasn't forced to attend rallies or smile for every photo op. Melania was strict about when and how he appeared in public, and even more protective about what was said about him. Reporters quickly learned that asking about Barron was a dead end. They'd get nothing but a cold stare, no answers, no explanations. Melania didn't have to defend herself. That was her power. She controlled every detail of Barron's life: what he wore, where he sat, who he spoke to, and who he didn't. Behind the scenes, she carefully crafted both his public image and private world. Many assumed it was just motherly love, but it was much more. It was a strategy. She was preparing him to step into the world on his own terms when the moment was right. Melania was the only one in the family who truly understood the price of fame. From the very beginning of her marriage, tabloids tore her apart, and photographers painted her as someone she wasn't. She learned to stay calm while being twisted into a character she didn't recognize. She promised herself her son would never endure that kind of pain. So she taught him how to hide his feelings, how to handle the camera flashes, and how to move on once the crowd stopped watching. Because of that, Barron seemed almost untouchable. No wild stories, no scandals, no bad headlines, just a boy quietly growing into a man. People thought he was simply shy, but he was more than that. Melania had shaped him that way. She had given him time. She watched as his siblings stumbled in public and his father dealt with every crisis. Meanwhile, her plan was to wait until Barron was truly ready to step forward. He wasn't forced into the family spotlight before he was prepared. No pressure too soon. When Barron finally emerged, it was clear her plan had succeeded. He wasn't nervous or unsure. He was calm, deliberate, and confident. Because Melania's silence wasn't weakness, it was her greatest strength. While others talked, she built. She raised a son who could walk onto a stage, shake a president's hand, and with just 2 words, shake the world. But what is it like to grow up inside such a cage? To have your life so tightly controlled, yet wield quiet power? For Barron, his mother's silence was safety, but also a prison. What he learned inside that cage would shape everything he did after. Barron Trump grew up with more wealth than most could imagine, but he lived in a golden cage no money could open. On the outside, it looked like the perfect childhood. Penthouses, castles, private jets, custom suits before his teens. But beneath all that luxury, he was lonely in a way only someone in his position could understand. His life was never truly his own. He was the son of a president. Every step, every moment, every thought was watched. Secret Service was always nearby, at school, at home, even when he just wanted to eat lunch quietly in public or at big events. He was never truly alone, but he felt a loneliness only constant surveillance can bring. Barron didn't laugh loudly in the cafeteria or hang out with big groups of friends at school. Instead, he'd grab his tray, find a quiet spot, and sit with his head down, saying nothing. His thoughts stayed locked deep inside. Sometimes other kids tried to reach out, but how do you connect with someone whose life is so different from yours? No one ever got close to Barron. He wasn't rude or arrogant, just distant. It was like he already understood how risky it was to let people in. Teachers described him as polite but withdrawn, intelligent but not eager to show off. Even his presence in class made some uneasy. There were security agents standing outside classrooms, their earpieces buzzing, ready to step in if needed. Every moment of Barron's day was planned and controlled. Even the simplest things, going to his locker, boarding the bus, opening a textbook, felt like performing on a stage he never chose. Yet despite all the rules and pressure, Barron began quietly asserting himself. He started making decisions that were truly his own, little by little. He became quietly passionate about sewing, traveling all the way to Louisiana to pick fabrics and work with designers who could bring his ideas to life. He dressed the way he wanted, not to be trendy or fit in, but because it reflected who he was becoming. One of the rare things no one controlled was his wardrobe. That small freedom was a clear sign of his growing independence amid the tight control. Barron was different in more ways than just his clothes. Even as a kid, he was disciplined in a way many would admire. People got close, but he stayed composed. He remained calm even as his family's name flooded the news. From a young age, he learned to absorb the chaos around him without letting it get to him. Showing emotions was seen as a weakness. His ability to hold his feelings in check became one of his greatest strengths. He watched and learned how his brothers slipped up, how his dad handled pressure and the pitfalls of fame, and saved his energy for when it truly mattered. Barron's childhood wasn't easy, despite the glamorous exterior. It was during those long, quiet years that he grew tough in a way only life inside that bubble could teach. The rumors, the demands, and the constant scrutiny became challenges he learned to endure, and even use as motivation. By the time he finally stepped into the spotlight, Barron wasn't just another privileged kid riding his family's name. He had carved out his own peace of mind by pushing back against the walls that once confined him. Though he learned discipline and calm, he never forgot what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated, and misunderstood. Those feelings would soon shape how he chose to reintroduce himself, not as the loudest Trump, but the smartest. When it came time to shift his role in the family story, Barron didn't hesitate to show just how far he had come. Most people expected Barron Trump to stay in the background during the 2024 election, just like he always had. But behind closed doors, something had shifted. Barron couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. His family was stunned when he stepped up with a calm, quiet confidence. Unlike his dad's usual tactics or the loud, aggressive style his brothers favored, Barron had his own approach, and for the first time, he made sure everyone noticed. He realized the old way of running a campaign wasn't cutting it. All the protests, TV interviews, and non-stop news coverage didn't reach the voters who really mattered. They mostly influenced older generations. Barron knew something his brothers didn't. Gen Z wasn't tuning into cable news or political rallies. In a world that felt fake, this generation scrolled through their phones and tuned into podcasts to find something genuine. And Barron knew exactly how to reach them. He pitched a fresh idea: shift the campaign's focus to unconventional media. Instead of his dad talking to stiff news anchors in suits, Barron urged him to appear on shows hosted by people Gen Z trusted, podcasters and influencers like Noel Wells, Theo Vaughn, and John Paul. At first, his dad didn't get why those names mattered, but Barron explained. Millions of young voters were already listening, forming opinions, and might be open to Trump's message if it came from familiar voices. The campaign took Barron's advice seriously. Slowly, Donald Trump started showing up on platforms no one had considered before. The results were staggering. Huge streaming numbers, viral clips, and a younger audience tuning in like never before. Barron found a way to connect with a generation his brothers either didn't understand or had long ignored. What set him apart wasn't just his ideas, but how he delivered them. Barron never shouted or demanded attention. He didn't bicker with family at dinner or chase headlines. He stayed composed, made his points, and let the outcomes speak for themselves. Meanwhile, his brothers competed to be louder, fighting for the spotlight. Ivanka, on the other hand, focused on protecting her image at all costs. But Barron knew being loud wasn't what gave real power. It was doing what was right. Quietly, he carved out his own path while Don Jr. fired off tweets and Eric stormed stages. His strategy worked because it spoke to what people genuinely cared about. He wasn't pretending to be someone else. He was authentic, and that made all the difference. People who'd barely noticed him before started seeing how he was unlike the rest of his family. He spoke their language naturally, not because he learned it. It was just who he was. That quiet influence began to shift the whole family dynamic. He began trusting his own instincts more, even when others disagreed. It didn't take long before Barron's brothers realized he was no longer just the youngest kid in the room. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Without making a scene or craving the spotlight, Barron had quietly become the key player behind the campaign's most effective strategy. His presence wasn't just noticed, it actually made a real impact for the first time. He stepped out of the shadows, not by playing the family's old game, but by rewriting the rules entirely. As the campaign gained momentum, everyone started wondering, if Barron could quietly reshape a presidential race, what might happen when he set out to change the Trump family itself? The Trump family power struggle. Power had always been up for grabs among the Trump siblings. The older ones fought relentlessly to prove they were the true heirs to their father's empire. Ivanka worked hard to craft a polished image, classy, composed, always ready to smooth over family controversies for the media. Don Jr. took on their father's fiery persona head-on, becoming the loudest defender of the family name, firing back at critics with sharp insults and fierce loyalty. Eric followed closely, equally intense but a bit more under the radar. They all talked over each other, vying to be the loudest voice in the room. But while they bickered over who should carry the torch, Barron stood apart, quietly observing it all. From the outside, his silence looked like weakness. But Barron wasn't retreating out of fear. He was watching carefully. He studied his brother's moves, their fights, and how their ambitions often clashed. Slowly, he started to see what they missed. They were all playing a losing game. Barron didn't want to beat them at it. He wanted to change the game entirely. People couldn't help but notice his calm presence. He didn't chase cameras, lash out at critics, or try to impress with grand speeches or drama. Yet he stood out more than ever precisely because of how steady he was. While Don Jr. and Ivanka seemed impulsive or rehearsed, Barron appeared focused and nearly unshakable. He didn't let the chaos around him dictate his moves. Instead, others had to wait for him to find his rhythm. That strength grew more obvious as he embraced his true self. Barron wielded real influence without shouting or fighting. He brought a sense of calm to the family, a kind of peace they had never experienced before. While the others pulled the family in different directions, Barron stayed grounded, offering a more modern approach. He understood the world beyond their bubble better than they did. He didn't reject the family legacy, but he wasn't afraid to challenge it when it made sense to do so. At first it was just small, quiet nudges, an idea here, a gentle push there. But over time, his voice grew louder in the room. His family began to listen, not because he demanded their attention, but because he proved his instincts were right. He found his own place and his own voice, all without ever having to fight for it. The family needed someone like that, someone who could bring change without making things worse. As the 2024 campaign rolled on, it became clear Barron wasn't just working behind the scenes. His way of thinking began to influence everything, from how events were chosen to how his father spoke to younger voters. Barron shifted the balance without breaking it. No one was forced to follow him, but it was impossible to ignore where he was quietly leading. For the first time, the Trump family wasn't just a group of individuals competing to be the best. There was someone who could keep things steady and hold the center. And it wasn't the polished Ivanka or the fiery Don Jr., it was Barron, the one everyone thought would stay silent. His brothers started accepting this new reality and wondered, if Barron could unite the family without raising his voice, what could he do when he actually spoke up? Melania's master plan. Melania Trump seemed to know from the beginning that Barron would inherit more than just a famous last name. He'd get the demands, scrutiny, and pressure that came with it, and she wasn't going to let him face that unprepared. While the rest of the family fought publicly for attention and power, Melania worked quietly behind the scenes to make sure Barron was ready for anything. She wasn't just raising him to survive with his dad in the spotlight, she was teaching him how to rise above it all. Throughout his childhood, every decision Melania made had purpose. It wasn't just about shielding him from reporters or giving him space because she disliked the media. With his brothers craving noise and attention, she wielded silence as a shield to protect Barron and give him room to grow. Barron didn't waste those quiet years. They were like training sessions. He learned to stay calm when others lost it, to wait for the right moment to act, and to keep his thoughts close until it was time to speak. Melania taught him something no one else in the family seemed to understand. It's easy to be loud, but it takes real intelligence to be quiet. His brothers loved being seen, rushing into fights and cameras to stay in the spotlight. Ivanka worked hard to maintain a polished public image and political career. But neither approach worked for Barron. He learned from Melania that true power doesn't always announce itself. The power that matters can wait. Even as a boy, you could tell by the way he carried himself. It wasn't fear holding him back, but good manners. Melania told him throughout his life that the world, and even his own father, didn't truly know who he was. He was the only one who owned his identity. She whispered that he could make his own choices and wasn't bound by the rules everyone else followed. Everything Barron has done since then comes from that lesson. Even now, you can see how her guidance shaped him into a strong person capable of handling a world that won't always be fair. Barron doesn't get angry when attacked. He doesn't overplay his successes when praised. He moves at his own pace, follows his own counsel, and chooses his moments. None of this is by accident. Those lessons came quietly over the years from the one person in his life who truly understood how harsh the spotlight could be. Melania knew how to shield him when others couldn't, because she had lived through it herself. She'd faced endless scrutiny over her words, her wardrobe, and her marriage. People made up stories about her, dissected every move, and threw around names she didn't deserve. Early on, she decided Barron would never have to face that kind of shame. She didn't just protect him from the spotlight. She taught him how to stand strong against it. That's why, when the moment came, Barron stepped into the public eye with calm confidence. He didn't stumble into the spotlight by accident. He walked in deliberately, fully aware of what he was doing and why. Everything he accomplished during the 2024 campaign, the way he reached young voters through unexpected channels, the way he tuned out his brother's noise, was all because of what Melania taught him. She might not have planned every move, but she gave him the tools to succeed. And that might be her lasting legacy. Not her speeches, not her time as First Lady, and not even the Be Best campaign. It's him. Becoming a man who's cool, strong, and smart enough to rewrite his family's story. She took small steps, working behind the scenes where no one could see her. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Click on the next video popping up on your screen. You won't want to miss. In politics, control means everything. But there's always one factor no one can predict: family. For years, Barron Trump stayed in the background, quiet, distant, and just out of the spotlight. Yet behind closed doors, something was quietly shifting. Even Donald and Melania struggled to hold back their tears during a rare, emotional moment. Now, for the first time, cracks have begun to show in the tightly sealed world of the Trump family. And what happened to Barron? Even those closest to him were completely caught off guard. On January 20th, 2025, in front of millions watching in Washington, D.C., Barron Trump changed his story, without saying a word. In one unforgettable moment, Barron stunned the world and transformed right before their eyes. Once the quiet kid who kept to the shadows while his siblings took center stage, Barron's transformation was unexpected. It wasn't just that the boy had grown into a young man towering over his father at 6'9". There was something more. That day marked not only Donald Trump's return to power, but also the surprising emergence of his youngest son, a figure the country had mostly forgotten. Shy around cameras and deliberately kept away from the media frenzy swirling around his father, Barron usually stayed off the radar. But that day, his mere presence brought tears to the eyes of two of the most calculating figures in modern politics, Donald and Melania Trump. Barron's change wasn't just physical, it was a powerful, silent statement of identity and presence. How did the most protected member of the Trump dynasty go from invisible to the focus of global attention in mere seconds? This isn't just any teenager's story. It's the rise of a secret weapon, one destined to hold tremendous power and influence. No one saw it coming. So, who is Barron Trump, really? Barron William Trump was born on March 20th, 2006 in New York. From that moment on, his life was carefully shaped by his mother, Melania Trump. A Slovenian former model, she made it her mission to raise her only child away from the media spotlight and the chaos his father often stirred. While Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric stepped into the public eye with TV interviews, business ventures, and press events, Barron lived in a very different world, with an entire floor of Trump Tower to himself. Though Melania personally selected private tutors and teachers for him, she never handed off her role as caretaker, nor did she rely on nannies. Melania personally taught Barron, instilling in him traditional values, including lessons on diplomacy and public speaking. Above all, there was one non-negotiable rule: absolute privacy. Barron was virtually invisible during the 2016 presidential campaign, rarely seen at events. And when he was, his face was a blank slate. This kid didn't play by the same rules as his brothers, and that message was clear. Unlike his siblings, who were constantly in the public eye delivering speeches, negotiating deals, and running charitable foundations, Barron was always kept out of the spotlight. It wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Melania Trump made it perfectly clear that her son Barron came first. So, while the political chaos swirled around them, she shielded him from headlines, kept him away from the prying media, and protected him from the pressures of public life. The youngest, most private member of the Trump family had always carved his own path, away from the family name and the glare of fame. From a young age, Barron was fascinated by complex software, spending hours building intricate digital models and exploring software development. Reports say he played a surprising role in his father's recent campaign, acting as a social media strategist who crafted algorithms and hashtags aimed at engaging younger voters, boosting his father's popularity. His talents leaned toward technology and design, not politics or public appearances. Under Melania's careful and loving guidance, Barron developed a deep passion for music, especially drumming. Melania embraced the energy, creativity, and sometimes chaos that came with it, a stark contrast to his father's business-focused instincts. Who would have guessed that the loudest instrument in the house belonged to the quietest Trump? What made him stand out so much from his older half-siblings? Was Melania's fierce desire for privacy actually preparing Barron for something bigger? Could his silence have been a calculated move all along? The move that changed everything. For years, people thought Barron was shy, nervous, and wanted to stay anonymous. He showed little interest in politics. But the Barron of 2025 defies all of that. To many, that was the clearest sign that something was brewing, because in politics, quiet power moves often speak louder than any speech. Barron had been silent for nearly 2 decades. He carried himself like a man with a plan, walked like a leader, and looked like a strategist. But what if this was just the start of something far bigger? Barron's transformation wasn't just a teenager growing into an adult. It was the emergence of a mysterious figure suddenly stepping into the spotlight as a potential heir to a political dynasty. That's what makes it so unsettling. No one really knows his true role. Not his siblings, who have been overshadowed by this new image, and not the media, forced now to cover a story deliberately kept under wraps for over 15 years. Barron made only rare, distant appearances. No speeches, no interviews. Even after his father returned to the White House, he remained out of view. Many assumed the Trump family would move into the White House immediately after the 2016 election. But that never happened. After President Trump won the election, Melania Trump chose to spend several months in New York so Barron could finish his school year. But this move seemed more like a strategy to keep her only son away from the political spotlight. The distance Melania put between Barron and the White House was more than just physical. It was symbolic. The message was clear. Barron was not a political pawn. He was rarely seen, and when he did appear, it was under very controlled circumstances. He mostly stayed quietly in the background. Yet even that was enough to draw attention. A single photo of Barron standing next to his father would ignite a flood of speculation about his posture, height, and expression. Every public appearance raised more questions than answers. Who was this reserved young man who chose not to engage despite standing at the center of power? Was it for protection, indifference, or some other unseen influence? Because so much about Barron was unknown, his absence from the spotlight sparked more intrigue than his actual presence. This lack of information fueled widespread curiosity, and online communities formed to analyze his habits, demeanor, and even his health. But over time, one thing became clear. Barron wasn't just another quiet teenager. He had distinct interests, ones that had little to do with his family's political legacy. While his brothers dove into business ventures, Barron found refuge in music, technology, and sports. Ironically, the more he tried to stay under the radar, the more attention he attracted. And this is where silence became a form of influence. Behind that distant exterior, Barron was quietly gaining a different kind of power. Eventually, Barron chose to attend New York University's Stern School of Business and decided to live in his own apartment in the city rather than a dormitory. In a Fox News interview, Melania spoke openly about their family life and expressed pride in Barron's decision and how well he was adjusting to college life. She said, "I can't say I'm an empty nester. I raised Barron to be his own person, to make his own choices, his own yeses and nos. It was his decision, and I respect that." Is Barron's sudden independence a quiet rebellion? A sign of a hidden divide within the family? Or simply the natural process of breaking free after years under his mother's careful watch? And what about Melania's cryptic remark, "I'm not an empty nester"? Was that just a casual comment or a subtle hint that there's more beneath the surface? The unforgettable moment that brought them to tears. Up until now, Melania Trump had only shown public emotion once, after the assassination attempt on her husband. Following that terrifying event at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, Melania gave her first public statement, breaking down in front of the cameras. She described how seeing the bullet strike her husband made her realize that her life, and the lives of her son Barron, were on the edge of profound change. She also thanked supporters who had cried alongside us. This was an unforgettable moment for the Trump family, deeply shaken by the near loss of their patriarch. Now that Donald Trump was president again, the family had moved past that dark day, but for the first time since the incident, Melania showed a rare wave of emotion. Known for her elegance and composure, it's unusual to see Melania openly emotional in public. So, what sparked this reaction? Something inside Melania softened in the most beautiful way on Inauguration Day, as Barron stood tall, poised, and commanding before the world. Naturally, the spotlight was on Donald Trump taking the presidential oath for a historic second term. But in just seconds, the narrative shifted. Standing beside the newly sworn-in president was his youngest son, looking sharp in a Navy suit. The shy boy from 2017 who always stayed in the background was gone. In his place was a calm, confident young man who didn't just blend in, he owned the moment. For a brief second, even Donald Trump looked surprised, his face showing that mix of proud father and, "When did you grow up?" The crowd chuckled when he joked about Barron's towering height. As the applause died down, Barron made his move. Like a seasoned pro, Barron cupped his ear, inviting even more applause. It was a quiet but powerful gesture that exploded across social media like fireworks on the 4th of July. The video went viral worldwide. Hundreds of thousands dubbed Barron the new icon of quiet power, while others called him the silent prince of Trumpism. Was this the beginning of Barron's own story? Absolutely. The world thought they knew Barron Trump, but this was a different person altogether. The most touching part of the event wasn't the public reaction. It was a private moment caught on camera. Melania discreetly wiped away a tear as Barron stood at his father's side, radiating a presence that demanded attention and silenced the room. It was an aura unexpected and striking for someone so young. For Melania, that single tear carried a flood of emotions. Pride for her only son, her baby boy stepping into the spotlight not just as the president's son, but as himself, Barron Trump. It symbolized everything she had sacrificed behind the scenes to bring him here. Years of self-discipline, restraint, and keeping him shielded from the public eye. Though inevitable, nothing could have prepared her for this moment. and her reaction said it all. This wasn't just another inauguration for Melania Trump. Will Barron step further into the spotlight? In recent appearances, Barron has been described as confident and articulate. Despite his rising popularity, he hasn't spoken publicly. No interviews, no statements, no political commentary. He's made a few public appearances, but always with a serious expression and a presence that speaks volumes. And that's where this story gets truly intriguing. Some believe Barron's interest in technology goes far beyond a hobby, that he's developed original software projects and stays connected with tech incubators. Others link him to innovative ventures blending social storytelling, data analysis, and digital politics. These are only hints, nothing officially confirmed or denied. In reality, Barron holds more power than his brothers because he has no past controversies, no scandals, and no public opinions that could spark backlash. He's essentially a blank slate. In politics, that's a huge advantage. It means his image is untarnished, flexible, and can evolve with the times without carrying the baggage of past mistakes. But because his last name is Trump, one of the most polarizing names worldwide, tied to lawsuits, aggressive political tactics, and constant controversy, people inevitably judge him through that lens. Even though Barron never asked for it, he carries the heavy legacy of a surname synonymous with conflict and headline-grabbing drama. That's the challenge. Can he reinvent such a notorious name? Some experts call him a post-Trump Trump. Unlike his predecessors, Barron doesn't make grand promises, which might explain why people place such high hopes on him. He presents himself as something more elusive, modern, and strategic, rather than just another figure of division. Despite this, he doesn't appear to have the same drive or ambition that runs in the family. Regarding whether Barron seeks the spotlight, sources close to the 19-year-old NYU student say he has zero interest in politics. Barron is not interested, a university insider told News Nation. He's nothing like his fiery father. He's more like his mother, Melania. Quiet, keeps to himself, and just gets things done. He's not trying to be the big man on campus. The source added, Barron is pretty apolitical, he doesn't get involved. That's just not his thing. Unlike his father, Barron prefers a life away from public attention. He has a great girlfriend and spends a lot of time with her, the source shared. He has friends, but unlike Donald Trump, he avoids the spotlight. So if you picture Barron leading college Republicans meetings at NYU, wearing MAGA hats and prepping for CPAC speeches, think again. Even student political leaders say Barron keeps his distance. His social life mainly revolves around hanging out with friends online after classes, according to sources cited by the Daily Mail. They also suggested he may have struggled more than most students to fit in at NYU this year. While Barron steers clear of politics, he can't fully escape attention because of his family's prominence. His older brother, Eric Trump, offered some advice. My advice to Barron is, you're probably the most watched person, maybe the most watched bachelor in the world right now, Eric told The Independent. So be careful. There are a lot of eyes on you. Even Tesla CEO Elon Musk mentioned having conversations with Barron about consciousness and video games. A social media influencer praised him as someone who can both successfully run a business and connect with people from all backgrounds. Some NYU students have even noticed a significant shift in campus politics since his father, President Donald Trump, was re-elected. With his rising popularity, is Barron redefining his own legacy? While he may be steering clear of the political spotlight, he's certainly not avoiding attention. And it's not just because of his famous last name. Standing 6'9" definitely doesn't hurt either. So far, Barron has been shielded, either by his own choice or his mother's influence, but the world has taken notice, and this moment won't be forgotten. Barron's story started unfolding publicly on his father's inauguration day, but where it goes from here is entirely up to him. He could choose to disappear again, dive deep into technology, and become a quiet global influencer, or perhaps take a completely different path into politics. What's clear is that for the first time, there's a branch of the Trump family that breaks from the usual pattern, one that doesn't shout, push, or try to sell itself aggressively. In a world where everyone craves the spotlight, maybe the most radical move is to avoid it altogether. The question now is different. Is Barron Trump the one who will redefine what power looks like in the 21st century? Or are we simply witnessing a media-created illusion, a figure shaped by mystery and high expectations? There's no ending to this story yet, but one thing is certain. We can no longer discuss the political future of the United States without mentioning Barron Trump. Not because of what he said, but because of what he hasn't said yet. What do you think? Is Barron stepping into a public role or just coming of age? Could he be preparing for something bigger than politics? Could he be the wild card no one expected? Whatever the answer, one thing remains undeniable. Barron's transformation has been real and deeply emotional for his parents. Is this the dawn of Barron's era, or the final chapter of the Trump dynasty? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click on the next one